For the first time in American history, a U.S. state just declared Bitcoin a strategic reserve asset. New Hampshire, live free or die. Just lit the fuse. And this is just the beginning. You are now witnessing the fourth turning go parabolic. The Fed is in panic mode. Michael Saylor just dropped the most savage corporate Bitcoin pitch ever. We have a couple clips that are gonna blow your mind, and Jay Powell takes the mic today. And what happens next could launch Bitcoin to 200K and beyond. Welcome back, I'm Rustin, and buckle up because it's time to send it.
I'll give you two pieces of this. Number one, Bitcoin clearly over the past 15 years of its existence has been the best performing asset class in history, bar none. It is widely expected to continue that track record over the next 10 years. So on an attitude of trying to create wealth long term, crypto makes a lot of sense. Second, most importantly from investment advisors' perspective, Bitcoin's price movements are independent of all other asset classes. The prices don't move in sync with stocks or bonds or real estate or gold or oil or commodities, and that makes it a perfect addition to a diversified portfolio. If you engage in rebalancing, which all investors ought to do periodically, owning Bitcoin helps to lower the risk of the portfolio while improving the returns. A risk-adjusted profile is one of the big claims to fame of adding Bitcoin to a diversified portfolio.
It's really the big claim for adding to anything. I mean, why do I need a new asset class? Okay, I have stocks, I have bonds, I have a nice fund for short-term money. I have a money market fund, and I have a little bit of gold. Why should I add Bitcoin? Your point is diversification, lower volatility, potentially adding to returns. Those are good reasons.
That's all there is to it. In other words, if you believe in modern portfolio theory, if you believe in Harry Markowitz and his Nobel Prize-winning research that says investing is as much about risk as return, we want to manage that risk. We want to diversify so that we don't have 12 eggs in one basket. We have 12 eggs in 12 baskets. Well, if I can add a new basket, if I can further diversify my risks to protect myself on the downside while preserving my potential for upside, why wouldn't I want to add the newest asset class, the first one to be invented in 170 years? Last time we had a new asset class was the discovery of oil in the 1850s. This is a wonderful opportunity to further improve the diversification, and all the academic data tells us.
And what?
That's right. There is no second best, and the strategic Bitcoin reserve era has officially begun. The governor just signed HB 302, making New Hampshire the first state in America to stack sats like it's Fort Satoshi. What does that mean? It means the United States just officially entered the Bitcoin game theory endgame. And the odds of multiple states doing the same just went vertical. Arizona's already next in line. Again, this is not a drill. Though, of course, Katie Slob will probably it up. And that's fine. You're free to choose to have fun staying poor. Make no mistake. This is a race, a digital gold rush, a monetary arms race against inflation, debt, and the collapse of the fiat system itself. Let's zoom out. According to Neil Howe, we are living through a fourth turning, a chaotic rebirth of the old world order. Trump, tariffs, populism, rate shocks, central bank panic. It's all happening now. And what's the asset that thrives in chaos, that shines when institutions fail? Well, it's not gold. It's Bitcoin. And now the fire's spreading. China just slashed rates. The Bank of Canada just cut. The U.S. is on deck. If Powell follows, it could mean 250 basis points from here. And if that happens, you better believe Bitcoin's not stopping at 100K. We're talking 200K plus and a lot higher. And Scott Bessent, Trump's Treasury Secretary, says the debt ceiling will be raised and default isn't an option. Translation: the money printer stays on. The U.S. will inflate away the debt, just like Luke Groman's been warning, and just like Bitcoiners have predicted for the past 15 years. Check it out.
Do anything about it, because there are no, we've now let it go so long, there are no easy answers. There's only a couple things you can cut, and that is defense, which no one wants to cut, entitlements, which no one wants to cut, or interest rates, which means we're going to have a longer period of higher inflation, which no one wants to do. And so when, sort of three choices, none of which that anyone wants, I think you get what we've had, which is, they just pretend it doesn't. I think what Ayn Rand said, you can ignore reality, but you can't ignore the consequences of ignoring reality. And I think we're starting to bump up against some of those consequences of ignoring reality for a long time. But I think that's why no one wants to really talk about the issues and the devaluation of, needed devaluation of U.S. debt, gold, et cetera, is ultimately there's only a couple ways out of this. And there's, productivity miracle, which has some issues of its own if it's not done at exactly the right pace. But other than that, it's default or financially repress, inflate away the debt, which is basically just a higher period of inflation while you're repressing rates, keeping rates low. So these are things that people just don't like to hear. They don't like to talk about, and they have political implications, and so they don't want to talk about that.
Global M2 is up 3.8% this year alone, now over 107 trillion, and Bitcoin is tracking this liquidity wave with an 80% correlation. Every time they pour fuel on the fire, Bitcoin ignites. And Michael Saylor just told Microsoft, stop the buybacks, buy Bitcoin instead. Bitcoin is 10x better than buying your own stock.
So Bitcoin is outperforming, Microsoft is going to do a buyback. Buying Bitcoin would be 10x better than buying your own stock. If Microsoft buys bonds, you're destroying 99.7% of your capital over 10 years, right? That's the problem. Bonds are toxic, but buying your own stock destroys 97% of your capital. So you're going to destroy 97% of your capital buying the stock of MSFT versus buying the Bitcoin. And if you want to outperform, you want to reverse the transaction. You put Bitcoin on the balance sheet.
And he's not just talking to Microsoft. He's talking to every CEO with cash. While you hand out dividends, Saylor stacks sats and crushes you on the balance sheet. This is corporate game theory going nuclear. And we get a lot more to get to, as well as massive history and like a checkbox list of finance Guinness records that apparently Saylor has set in just like the past year or two. But this is gonna blow your mind. But before we bring it home, look at our likes.
3 or 4 times, maybe.
I gotta pump those numbers up. Those are rookie numbers in this racket.
Don't forget to like, subscribe, and give us a pamp while we take a moment to recognize our friends powering this show over at the Bitcoin Way. Has someone peed in your mempool? Has the core versus knots debate got you confused as all these institutions race to accumulate Bitcoin? Well, don't get caught holding IOUs and refuse to be placed in a digital gulag. Get your Bitcoin off of exchanges, run a node. Self-custody is the revolution. It's how we win. And with the Bitcoin Way, you'll learn how to hold your freedom money with confidence. So visit the Bitcoin Way and begin your journey towards sovereignty today. And if you're looking to get started, you can schedule a free 30-minute consultation using that link in the show notes. You ever try to explain to your friends that taxation and money printing are theft, and they just ask if you caught Survivor last night? Well, not anymore. Thanks to the Orange Pill app, you can stack friends who stack sats. It's the ultimate hub to connect with fellow Bitcoiners, find meetups, and discover every Bitcoin conference happening near you and across the country. Bitcoin is better with friends, and now you can zap them instantly all in one app. What are you waiting for? Download the Orange Pill app today and go to a local meetup, and who knows? The connections you make could last a lifetime.
So a lot of our innovative capital markets activity, things like Strife, things like Strike, we had to fight through all sorts of complicated legal issues, complicated financial issues. We did a convertible preferred stock. It had never been done before. We listed on NASDAQ. It had never been done before. We attached a shelf registration to it. It had never been done before. We made it a perpetual dividend, good for 1,000 years. It had never been done before. We created a perpetual call option. It had never been done before. We put a shelf registration on it, never been done before. Now, when you go to 25 professionals with 30 years experience, say, I want to do 20 things that have never been done before, and I want to do them in a hurry. I need an answer in the next 48 hours, right? That creates a very stressful situation. And what I found with AI is, the AI doesn't have a lot of ego. I can ask it a question. I can tell it that's not right. I can tell it that's stupid. I can disagree. I can work through my issues. And then after I've gone through 20 iterations, which would have ground human beings into a pulp, I can then take the 95% answer to the finance team and the legal team and the bankers and the market and say, I think this is plausible. And I don't just share the result, I share the link. I say, go into the chat, I've uploaded 27 documents. I've actually had to grind through case law of every public company that's ever done this before. I've analyzed the finance. I think it's more likely than not this will work. And at that point, when you've taken the process to 95%, you can then get to a result and build consensus. And half of AI is about consensus and doing it in a cheerful, constructive way, right? When I'm yelling, I prefer to yell at the AI, right? I really want to do this. No, you can't. Well, what if I do this? No, well, and eventually you get to a point where maybe you can move forward. And I can say, with a high degree of confidence, right? A lot of the things we've done in the capital markets, we just couldn't have done that. Those two preferred stocks, Strife, are the first AI-designed securities that I know of, certainly in our industry. So,
the man is just like the rest of us, except for everything he talked about there that is beyond my understanding. But I can tell you what is within my autistic realm of understanding. Bitcoin treasuries are going viral. Vivek Ramaswamy and Strive Asset Management just announced they're raising $1 billion to go all in on Bitcoin. They're launching the first publicly traded Bitcoin treasury firm. Their mission? Apparently maximize Bitcoin exposure and beat MicroStrategy at their own game. Well, game on. And look at Metaplanet in Japan. From near zero to 1.4 billion in value after adopting a Bitcoin treasury strategy. And they're still buying. They just picked up 555 Bitcoin this week. They now hold 5,555 total. And this is the Bitcoin black hole effect. Once it starts, it doesn't stop.
Metaplanet is Japan's only publicly listed, regulated vehicle dedicated exclusively to Bitcoin. We serve as a secure, accessible entry point for domestic investors seeking exposure to the Bitcoin economy. Our platform combines capital markets with institutional discipline, aligned with the world's most recognized open source brand. Looking ahead, we see education as a critical part of accelerating adoption. Through our license for Bitcoin Magazine Japan, we aim to onboard 1 million people into Bitcoin in Japan. And not just into Bitcoin ownership, but into long-term understanding. And through the Bitcoin Hotel, located in central Tokyo, we're creating a physical hub for the community, a space for education, events, and real-world connection. We believe education, transparency, and accessibility are the key to building a durable on-ramp for the next generation. Now, this is our market cap over the last 20 years. For nearly 2 decades, it barely moved. Can you guess when we adopted the Bitcoin standard? In just 12 months, we've gone from near zero to over 1.4 billion in market cap. It's a reminder of what courage and conviction can do, and we owe that to our shareholders who believed in the pivot and backed us every step of the way. We also owe a generous dose of gratitude to Michael Saylor and Strategy for showing us the way. Now, I'd like to end by showing you a photo from exactly 1 year ago, our shareholder meeting on the day we adopted the Bitcoin standard. The room might look sparse to you, but for us, it was the best attended meeting we've had in a decade. Just 20 shareholders. But what followed was one of the most incredible shareholder meetings I've ever experienced. Thank you. This was our shareholder meeting just 6 weeks ago. Over 1,500 people attended, standing room only in the back, and an overflow room filled to the brim. A room full of Bitcoiners, shareholders, and supporters, all eager to learn, contribute, and be part of something bigger. You could feel the hope in the room, a collective desire for change, for something bigger. From 20 people last year to this, that's the Bitcoin effect. And this is just the beginning. Thank you.
India and Pakistan are flaring. We have global tariff trade wars, though we have news from Secretary Scott Bessent there with a meeting set to take place this weekend with China.
Yes, sir. We believe that the United States should be the premier destination for digital assets, and as members of this committee and the Senate are attempting to do, create good market structure around that, so that U.S. best practices are used around the world.
And that's really the point, right, is having American U.S. best practices to sort of set the pace for others to follow, rather than us trying to fill in the holes that others that may be created as others set that pace.
Yes, sir. And also that digital assets are an important source of innovation that will drive that can drive usage of the U.S. dollar around the world, as with stablecoin legislation. There is speculation that there may be up to $2 trillion of demand over the next few years for U.S. government securities from digital assets.
My time has expired, but I'll send you my question regarding Chinese.
Powell's under pressure. And Trump? Well, he says he has a very, very big announcement coming.
I think before then, we're going to have a very, very big announcement to make, like as big as it gets. And I won't tell you on what, but it's going to, and it's very positive. I'd tell you if it was negative or positive. I can't keep that out. It is really, really positive.
Probably Iran.
And that announcement will be made either Thursday or Friday or Monday before we leave.
Maybe peace, maybe trade deals. Either way, it's bullish for Bitcoin because after every geopolitical shock, Bitcoin outperforms. Even BlackRock says that.
And this is where Bitcoin starts to become exciting, because it starts to diverge from all the other assets. And the data kind of backs this up. Check this out. This is directly from BlackRock, which is the biggest asset management company in the world. Now, this chart compares what happens to 3 different asset types: stocks, gold, and Bitcoin, after major geopolitical events. And it's broken down into 2 separate columns: 10 days after a conflict and 60 days after a conflict. So when the world is fighting with itself, like the US-Iran conflict, for example, stocks beat gold, but after 60 days, gold beat stocks. But in both of those scenarios, Bitcoin beat both. During the pandemic outbreak, 60 days after it happened, Bitcoin was again the major winner. And again, during the 2020 US election disputes, Bitcoin was the clear winner. And again, during Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and again, during the US banking crisis when private banks were defaulting because of the high interest rates from the Fed. Now, BlackRock didn't publish the data on the yen carry trade when everything was falling apart because they didn't have the data just yet, but we do now. And 60 days after the world was terrified of how Japan's carry trade could infect the global markets, the winner, not Bitcoin, it was actually gold, but Bitcoin did beat stocks. And obviously more recently with the tariffs, Bitcoin again beat everything else. Why? One of the reasons is there's no tariffs on Bitcoin. Bitcoin does not have the same geopolitical risks like tariffs, torts, fees, and greedy governments, and a variety of other risks that are traditionally associated with owning other types of investments. And as more and more people begin to understand that Bitcoin has very different risks, this decoupling could continue.
Fiat? 300 trillion in global debt, default or inflate. Those are the options. Bitcoin? A fixed supply asset winning over states, corporations, and soon sovereign nations. I think it might be game over.
When the United States starts to accumulate Bitcoin, how do you view what happens after that? Is it just a mad dash? Every country in the world says, oh my God, we are behind the ball. We've got to go and acquire this as well. And Bitcoin goes to $1 million. Or is there some other, path that you see?
Yeah, I think what we're living through right now, I would describe as the unwind from World War II, or the world wars generally, right? I would say, just to remind everyone, not that you don't know, but the world was decimated, right? And the US was in a strong position. And the global relationship came about as the US effectively saying, hey, we'll help you guys get off your feet. I'll tell you what, you can produce stuff for us and we will export you the new world reserve currency to kind of get you back up on your feet. You need a customer. You need someone to import your goods and services. And also, if we produce stuff locally in the US, we'd have no one to export it to because you guys are decimated, crushed, and poor. And so you've seen all these markets importing real stuff into the US, all the stuff we need. Oil, food, right? All the stuff that we all consume. And we get 2-car garages and we get the big flat screen TVs. And in return, we distributed the new world reserve currency, which was the US dollar. Okay, that worked and was very kind of us in a biased American way. You know, obviously we get our advantages from that. But I think where the world is now is like, okay, cool. Thanks for helping us get back on our feet. Now what? Because we don't want to give you guys real stuff to consume and have amazing lives in exchange for this piece of paper you print. And you see Russia, you see China, they don't want to continue to buy our debt. The amount of treasuries that they are investing in is going down. They're talking about BRICS. I don't think that's an actual threat or anything we'll see in practice, but it's a rotation away from the dollar. No world reserve currency has had any staying power because you have to operate in a deficit. You have to export your currency and import real stuff, and it's unsustainable. You're importing goods in debt to give out a piece of paper. And so where I think we are is in the very early innings, and Bitcoiners get excited, and I'm one of the ones most guilty for that, of a rotation back to neutral reserve asset for the world. And if the United States acknowledges that Bitcoin carries those properties, even in a minor way, but says, you know, listen, the story of humanity is engineering a better world. And this Bitcoin thing looks like it maps very well to that thesis and story of our species. And it carries the properties that are necessary to transition to a neutral reserve asset. I think that's a huge deal in the grand scheme. I'm talking centuries of evolution of the geopolitical and macroeconomic relationships between the most powerful nations in the world.
New Hampshire just lit the fuse. Saylor just threw down the gauntlet. Strive is stacking. Powell is speaking. The world is unraveling and Bitcoin is ascending. Don't let the dip scare you. Zoom out. Stack harder. Opt out. Because in the words of Saylor, rich people own assets. And there is no greater asset than Bitcoin. That's why Bitcoin is taking over Las Vegas and you don't want to miss it. That's right. The biggest Bitcoin event of the year takes over Las Vegas May 27th through the 29th. At the Venetian. This is going to be absolutely insane. They have an absolutely stacked lineup. I expect history to be made. And the Simply team will be on site, and we hope to see you there. So don't forget to grab those tickets and use promo code SIMPLY for 10% off. Hey, hope you guys enjoyed this one. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and give us a pamp by sharing the Sound Money Gospel. And set those notifications for the best in Bitcoin delivered to you daily. Be your own bank. And I'll see you all tomorrow when we dissect whatever the hell Powell decided to unleash today. Love you guys. See you tomorrow. Peace.
If you prefer to go down with the ship, fuck you.